Welcome back. In this part 2 of this lesson, we will go over how to take this UV junk here, well, it's currently junk, and actually take something useful from it, export to an image editor, texture this object, compose it, and create the final result. So it sounds like a lot of work, and it's actually quite easy once you get the hang of it, so let's get right into it. So what we'll do is we'll just go hover our mouse over the UV image editor, hold down Control, and click the up arrow, and make it full screen. So now what we'll do is we'll actually take the images here and flip them the correct way for our the ease of use, basically. So we know that this piece of the iPad here needs to be on the bottom. So we can just rotate that 90 degrees, or sorry, rotate that 180 degrees. And that's as simple as that. And to actually figure out what side of the screen will be facing left to right, what we'll do is we'll actually go into the image editor again, go to face select mode, and let's see, let's just select these three pieces here. We'll rotate it such that about 90 degrees there. If we hold down Control while rotating it, it'll actually lock it in place. And now you can see here that it is the correct way. As for the back of the iPad, to figure out which part is top and which part is bottom, we'll select these pieces here. This is the bottom, that's the top. So let's just Control 1 over here again. Hit L to select the entire island. Rotate it. And by holding down Control, we can lock it into 5-degree increments. Control down there again. And yes, that is the correct way. Oops. You select the entire thing there. Okay, so now what we will do is actually move these so that they can be in a better position for us for when we're editing. So just hit L to select the whole entire island. Or as a matter of fact, we can actually go down here and just click island, so it selects the islands totally. And if you're confused about me saying islands, that's actually what these are called. Once you break down a UV map, it has different portions which are called islands. So we're just moving those around so that they can actually all fit onto this little gray square here. And let's make sure they have a little bit of space between them. Okay, and the last one is this little square here. And don't worry about the square being upright. It'll just have a circle in it, and circles don't have an up or down necessarily. Alright, so to actually create something useful from this, what we're going to do is we'll go down here, click New, and 1024 by 1024 should be alright for us. Let's just name this UV map. And what we'll do is we'll click OK. And just before I do that, 1024 by 1024 and other numbers like that, such as 512, I believe 216, things like that, they're all used because they're all actually to the power of 2. And most programs like this, even Photoshop and whatnot, it's easier for them to handle things that are to the power of 2 because of binary. So most of the time, if you have something like this, something that's divisible by 2 or to the power of 2 is usually your best option. So anything that ends with an even number should be fine. And that's all we'll do for that. And then what we'll do is go with UVs and export the UV layout. So to do that, we just simple as that. And I'll save this as uvmap.png. And simple as that, we are good to go. So if we open this here, you can see that we have a perfectly good UV map going for us. And now what we can do is we can open up our image editor. You'll most likely have Photoshop if you're, say, using this on a school computer. I personally use GIMP because, well, I cannot afford Photoshop quite yet, as well as this is actually a free alternative that I've gotten used to. Alright, so now that we have the image loaded up, just if you prefer, you can either do that by right-clicking, and there should be an edit with your image editor, or just File, Open, and then open your image. What we'll do is we'll go under File, Open as Layers, and I want to go under my UV map images here. And you can see we have a few images here. And what we'll do is we'll open up any one of them to start with and just move them onto the piece that we need. So just grab that and move it to where the back of the iPad would be, unless you want it on the front, that's completely up to you. And next we'll do that again with the home screen. And these are just images I pulled off of Google Images. Nothing special about them. And then we can just scale these layers. And what I'll actually do with this layer is I'll change down the opacity so I can actually see where it's actually going. And then we'll just scale it. And if I hold down Control, I can actually make sure it stays as the same aspect ratio. Sorry about that. And that just means that it won't be taller than it is wider. Once you scale it, it'll be consistent the entire time. And we'll just continue doing that until it's approximately scaled. The thing about this is that it may not be precise, and that's because we did not create this image ourselves, so we don't know how close it will be. Alright, and I won't be too nitpicky about this because it's just the tutorial. In my practice, I was a bit more stubborn with it, but that's alright. Now we'll create another layer, and we'll just call this one Circle. I have the layer BG saved there for background from one of the tests. And we'll just go under the button here. And to create the circle, if you have Photoshop, I believe there's actually a tool to just create a circle. From GIMP, I don't know if there is, so what I just did is, to have full control, create a circle. And I just edit the circle so that it stays where I need it to be, or is the size that I need it to be. And then I'll just use a bucket fill and fill that color. Then I'll go and create another circle. And get that to about this size here, just something like that. And then I'll actually go to the eraser, and the eraser will only affect whatever I have highlighted, which is that circle. Alright, and finally what we'll do is we'll create one last layer. We'll call it BG for background, and we're actually going to hide this layer below almost all the other layers. So just drag it down, and this seems to be stubborn right now. Alright, so just move this layer to just above the UV map, and whatever color you want your iPad to be, just select that color. I'll make mine just a little bit lighter than black. And then we'll use the bucket fill and just fill the entire layer. Oh, I believe I still have my circle selected. There we are. So fill that entire layer, and now we're good to go. So before you export it, just turn off the UV map PNG just to make sure it does not get exported with it. Make sure the home screen is actually at 100% opacity if you haven't yet. And then we can just go File and export the image. So we'll call this one I'll call it UV map image. And then just export it, and we are good to go. And that was probably one of the most lengthy parts of this tutorial. So next what we'll do is we'll actually just go into image, open image, go to where we saved it, and it perfectly lines up with everything that we have, just like that. Alright, so just minimize that now. Okay, so now we can go under here and just take off one of those options. Let's go to materials, click new material. Image or movie is what we want. We'll go under image and the UV map image. And we want the coordinates to be UV, which it should be by default. And just click UV map. And it should be good now, actually. We go under material. There, we can actually see that we have successfully textured it. So now what we'll do is we will set up the scene. So if we add in a camera, and let's actually get rid of that background image because we don't need it anymore. We'll just grab out the camera until we see where the iPad is. There we go. Let's just Shift C. Sorry about that. If the cursor is moved outside of the origin point, just hold down Shift and click C, and it'll set it to the original point. And what we want to do is actually rotate around the cursor. Now, if you've ever done photography before, you might know that it helps to have a composition guide. So if we go under the camera settings with the camera selected, we can actually just click any one of these and get a grid or a pattern or something to help us decide where we're going to place the camera. So if we just click thirds, we can actually see the rule of thirds is now being applied to the camera, and we can break up the scene in order to actually show, where we would like different objects. So I'm going to place it right about there, and you'll see why in just a moment. What we're actually going to do is select this iPad, and to make sure the back is not showing, or we didn't do the back for nothing, what we'll do is we'll actually duplicate it. So holding down Shift and then D, you can duplicate it. And let's just rotate about the Z axis. Let's go 180 degrees, just so we can see the back of it. And if we actually rotate a bit more around its local axis, which is using the comma key, and then we can actually set this up to be a bit more stylish. And if you ever do computer graphics for ads, this is probably very, very handy to know, as it'll allow you to actually learn how they actually do it in professional industries. So this is more or less a real-world example of where computer graphics will come in handy. Alright, so we want it on one side of the screen, more so the left side, because most people read it from left to right. So you'll see the product first and then the words afterwards. So just like that, and then we'll do some simple lighting. So let's see, we'll choose a Hemi lamp. And these lamps are nice bright lamps. They're not too distracting or anything. And they do a very, very good job at lighting a scene. And we'll also choose an area lamp. These are even brighter, and they're a quick, easy way to light up a scene as much as you need to. If we hit F12, you can see that it's a bit bright, so we'll turn down, let's say, this one, the area lamp, to about 0.6, and the Hemi lamp down to about a 0.7. So now it's not as bright, it's not as distracting. There's still some glare, and that's because we actually need to do something about the texture on this. And since we have an actual duplicate what will happen is if you do a change to this one in the materials, this iPad here will also affect, or it will get affected by those changes. So we can select any one of them, take down the specular to about, I'd say, let's go 0.2. Perhaps maybe even 0.1. And this is really a trial and error type of thing, where I need to find what makes it look not as plasticky, or to basically get any effect that you need about the specularity there. Alright, so next up is, just render that one more time. We can see that the background is actually quite plain. So what we'll do is we'll go under our world settings, click real sky, blend sky, paper sky, and this will create a more intriguing image for anybody seeing an advertisement. And let's just change the horizon color. I'm going to go with a nice bluish type color, and just F12 to render that once more. And now we have something that greatly improves at what we see. Now, this is going to extend on previous knowledge about rendering, and that's using Ambient Occlusion. And this will create a more realistic effect. A lot of people use it, and a lot of people who are new to this actually leave it at 1. So let's actually go to slot and slot 2 and hit F12 to render. You can see that there's a big difference, and I'm just going to use the keys on the top of my keyboard to switch between layers. You can see that the it actually creates this little shadow here, and that's a good thing. That makes it look more realistic. But the factor is much too high, so let's put it down to about 0.2. And just so you can see the difference, let's go to slot 3. So this is our original. This is with 0.2 ambient occlusion, and this is with a full 1. So I'd say about 0.2 is good. And let's actually change that to multiply, and you'll see why in just a moment. So here is our original image. Here's with a whole entire factor of 1 under ambient occlusion. Here's a factor of 0.2. Here's a factor of 0.2 with multiply. And this basically takes, and it's I would say it's a more accurate, most of the time, way of actually describing the shadows that are bouncing off this object. And that's basically all there is to that. And actually, just for making it look more interesting, let's rotate the camera a bit, hit R+Z, and let's just rotate this ever so slightly. And what this does is it creates a little off balance there, and even in the background now you can see that the lines here, the black lines, are actually more of an angle. So this will be a little bit more visually appealing. Our final thing to do is just move this over just a hair, and maybe down. And once again, this is a lot of trial and error just to make sure that this is in the right spot for your composition. And me personally, I like that, so I'm going to keep that. Okay, so now let's go into compositing, use nodes, and click backdrop. And once again, we'll just make this full screen with control up. And what we want is to actually use a viewer node once again, and just connect those. And we'll have one viewer node here for the original image, and then one again here for the processing that we will now do. Okay, so if you want to just zoom in on that in your backdrop, just hold down Alt and click V. If you want to zoom out, just click V a few times. Alright, so first thing we'll do is we'll add in a color and a color balance. And this will just create a more lively type image. So you can see if you switch it, you can actually 1 second there actually. There we go. Make sure you have this node selected first before you start doing anything with the color ramp, or else you will not see the results. So you can see this will do a lot of things depending on where you move it to. We'll give it a slight blue hint there. On this one we'll go probably a little bit more red. And this is the highlights, the midlights, and low lights, I believe, in that order. Or as they call it, lift, gamma, and gain. And this is just, you know, playing around with the settings to get more of an effect that you want. So if you want a warmer type of tone, you'll probably want warm colors. Otherwise, you probably have cold colors and whatnot. We can see here the original image had a bit of red to it, and now it's more of a bluish green. Let's actually change that to a bit more blue. There we go. And I'm not going to be too nitpicky about this because once again this is just a tutorial, but you yourself should always take the time and create the best image you possibly can. And this is probably one of the really easy type of compositing tutorials because this only uses two nodes, the color balance and the filter. And the filter that we want to use is actually sharpen. So if you use that right away, you can tell it really does sharpen up the image. But what we need is a lot less than this, so something around 0.2 or 0.3, maybe even 0.15. And to see the difference between the two images, you can see now this one's a bit, you could see it's a bit blurry. That sharpen node just takes it and just adds a bit more crispness to the image. And having a nice crisp image for a render for an advertisement is usually good. So the only thing left to do is just render this. Click 100% here under your resolution and hit render. And it shouldn't take long on my machine, it's pretty quick. Then we can go image, and we can save the image, and let's just save it here. And we'll just call it the test render. And you can actually stop the video now if that's all you want to learn. But to actually do the lettering that I used, we can go under here, test render, edit, and I'm just going to quickly check the font that I used. Okay. I have that saved already. And all that we have to do is create this type of image. Is just go under here and type in what we want to write. So in the other one I have Two Giants Collide, introducing Appledroid, the time is now. So just the same thing. Let's actually select a white color for the text. Introducing Appledroid. So yeah, just some like simple little phrase there. And if you actually want to, you can go ahead and further edit in your image editor of choice. I personally didn't. And then of course you just save the image from here. So this is a basic tutorial on how to create an advertisement. If you want, you can aim for something a little bit more like this. The tutorial version wasn't as professional, I'm sorry about that, but it's once again just trial and error. I took about 2 or 3 hours just doing the colors on this image here. But of course, you know, it's not like that for everyone. Some people can do it in just 5 minutes. But by all means, go ahead and just play around with the settings, and you should get something a lot nicer than what I have, hopefully. I'm just going to check one thing real quick. Actually, if you add in environment lighting, it'll help brighten up the image a lot more. But you don't need too much environment lighting. Perhaps let's go 0.15, and it'll brighten up your image a lot more. so that when you do export it, or I can even just open it as layers. Sorry about this. But yeah, if you just export it with a little bit of environment lighting, it will really brighten up the image. And you can see here in just one moment there. You can see the difference. This one's a slightly darker, and then the other one's slightly brighter. But yeah, just go ahead and mess around with the settings and try to create the best image you possibly can. But hopefully this video helps you with learning how to create an advertisement.